Hi everyone, Deborah, Onoja nutritionist dietitian here again. So I just finished in a patient referred by the doctor, a diabetic patient, and in course of her section, she got to mention that she had previously put pap on the list of foods that she avoids because she noticed that it's like whenever she takes pap spikes up her blood sugar level, and that's what's prompting me to do this video. So pap is made from grains like corn, guinea corn, or millet. Now these grains are food sources of whole grains, and usually we recommend whole grains for our patients, diabetic patients especially, because they are food sources of dietary fiber. We get dietary fiber majorly from vegetables, from fruits, and also from whole grains. Now we recommend a diet abundant in dietary fiber for diabetic patients especially, because dietary fiber helps to slow down the absorption rate of the carbohydrate food, and then that also helps for better glucose control. So when we take in food, the food is absorbed into the body system like water consistency. So when you take in food, it's like passing the food through a sieve. So the intestine serves as a sieve that absorb the nutrients, which is like liquid like in texture, very very liquid like water consistency. So the remaining bulk is what we pass out as two. So the more fiber the food contains, the slower the absorption rate, and when the carbohydrate food is absorbed slowly, there's better glucose control because there's no spike. There's no rapid absorption of the food material because it's fibrous, so it's slowly absorbed. So we need fiber in the diabetic diet. Now back to corn. So when we process these whole grains, I'll use corn as an example for processing pap. What happens is that we soak the corn, it's still in the kernel, the corn kernel, the whole grain. We soak it, allow it to ferment for a couple of days. Then we mill it. After milling, we now sieve. Now when it's sieved, meanwhile corn, the grain has three layers, which is the first part, the endosperm, which is where the starch is concentrated. That's the innermost layer of the grain. The second part is the germ. Then the third part, which is the outermost layer of the grain, is the bran. The bran is where the fiber of the grain is concentrated, while the innermost layer, which is the endosperm, is where the starch of the grain is concentrated. So by the time we have soaked this corn, we have milled, we have sieved it, the starchy part of the grain goes into the bowl. That's what is consumed, as pap traditionally. So that thick consistency, that molten thick consistency that is made into pap, that's the starchy part of the grain. That's cornstarch, right? While the shaft is majorly the bran concentration. That's the fiber that is discarded. So traditionally the fiber is discarded to animals. Most times the fiber isn't used for anything. It's mostly given to animals to consume. Now what has happened in course of processing that particular corn grain is that we have moved the corn from being a food source of whole grain, having all the parts of the grain intact, to being a refined grain left with only the corn flour, left with only the corn starch rather, that is consumed as pap. So that way, because we have leached the fiber out, remember we said that we want food materials to have more fiber so as to slow down the absorption rates, of the glucose content of the food. What happens is that we have taken out the fiber, absorption rate of the cornstarch is going to be very, very rapid. And that's why you see spikes in your blood sugar level whenever you take pap. So what we usually recommend our patients do is to leave the shaft of any grain they choose, back into the pap. So if you're using corn, guinea corn, or millet, after milling, don't sieve it, just leave the shaft back. Use your high power blender to blend, and then it comes out really smooth. And that is what you use to make your pap. Now, because it still has the fiber concentrated, back into the pap, it slows that down at the absorption rate of the carbohydrate, and then it makes you have a better glucose control, right? As opposed to having just the cornstarch that you would have as corn. Have you ever that you have as pap? Have you ever imagined if you know how to make pap and you could make it yourself? Have you ever looked at the quantity of fiber, the residue that comes out when you make your pap? You see all the roughages. You can make 1 or 3 cups of corn, and then the quantity of pap, the cornstarch that comes out, is going to be as small as half a cup, or sometimes a quarter a cup, and then you have the rest of everything as fiber. So you can imagine putting that back into the pap, how much fiber you'll be letting in, how well your bowel movements would be, how better your cholesterol level would be, how well you'll be able to control your weight, because the fiber does not add to the calorie content or carb content. It majorly adds to the the bulkiness of the meal. Okay, so if you're diabetic and you want to have pap, process it leaving the residue of the pap on, and you'll be able to get all the benefits of consuming whole grains. So I'll see you again in the next video.